Well, Senator, thank you for coming on the program. Welcome. We're so excited to have you.
Thank you, Bea. I'm delighted to be here with Texas Impact.
Well, this is such an interesting topic that we're going to be talking about because it's not really about legislative activity. It's about your work outside the legislature. So you were in the Texas Senate and left, I guess, in January. But while you were there, you happened to be in the Senate during the Uvalde shooting.
Yes. In fact, I was in an education hearing, an interim hearing, on the day that the mass shooting occurred in Uvalde. And I would say about 11:45 that day, we got word, one of our senators who was on the committee got word that there was a lockdown in Uvalde at Robb Elementary. And so we stopped our activity in the committee and said a quick prayer. And of course, you know, schools go on lockdown all over the state, and all over the nation all the time, and have a good outcome. And so we were hopeful that within a few hours that the outcome would be a good one. Unfortunately, that didn't turn out to be the truth, and we lost 19 precious students and 2 of their educators that day.
So, as a senator, I mean, can you just talk a little bit about what your feelings were, your feelings of helplessness or efficacy as you sat there knowing that something bad was happening?
Absolutely. Throughout the day, we checked in and checked to see how things were going, and we could see that it was not going to turn out well. And so kind of late that afternoon, I got in my car to drive home to Fort Worth after the hearing, and the grief that consumed me was just overwhelming. And I know that folks all over the state of Texas and all across our nation felt that same kind of grief. And we feel it every time there's one of these mass shootings, whether it happens in a school or happens in a church or a grocery store or wherever it may be. But for me, I lived with that grief all week long as a Texas senator, just thinking through what that meant and what it was going to be like for the community to overcome that tragedy. Just awful. And by the weekend, I began to realize that I had to do something with that grief, that I had to think through what was the most meaningful thing that I could do with my time to help the community of Uvalde. And by Monday, it became really clear to me that the thing we needed to do was build a new elementary school for the children of Uvalde so that they never had to cross that threshold again. When you start to think about healing a community, and you really think through what it's going to take to heal the children after a tragedy like that, and then the educators, because there are so many issues that revolve around that, whether it's mental health, school safety, just a myriad of things that had to be thought through by all of us. And so from that, I had lunch with a friend one day, and he and I made a phone call to Chris Huckabee of Huckabee Architects. Huckabee designs schools all across the nation, but particularly across Texas. And I called my friend Chris, and I said, Chris, if we could raise the funds to build the children of Uvalde a new elementary school, would you be willing to do the design work for free? And instantly, he responded to me, of course I would. And from that one phone call, the dominoes began to fall day after day. Chris called the folks at HEB Foundation, the Charles Butt folks, and within hours, they had made the commitment to contribute $10 million to help us build a school. When that happened, Chris knew that we would be able to get it done. I knew that we would be able to get it done. He called his friend at Juris Construction and asked his friend, if we can raise this money, would you do the construction contract for free? And his friends at Juris Construction said yes. And with that, we were off and running.
Wow, that is really something. So was that a new kind of paradigm for you to move from legislating into suddenly being a project manager of a very large construction project?
Well, and I wouldn't call myself a project manager for that, but I would call myself a project manager for the fundraising efforts that we have going on. And there are a lot of people that have been our partners and held our hand and worked to help us make this a little bit easier.
So how is that fundraising structured? Do you have a foundation, right?
We do. We formed, within 30 days, we had a foundation formed. And we have added directors to the foundation that can help us in different regions of the state to raise the funds. I would say this is kind of a multi-level fundraising initiative, and it's like nothing that I've ever been involved in before. I've raised, money for American Heart Association and Make-A-Wish Foundation and some organizations like that on a much smaller level than this. We have a $60 million goal. And to date, we have raised over $47 million of that $60 million. So we're closing in on the final stages of our fundraising. And so we're at that place now where we have started a crowdfunding initiative, and we're hopeful that folks across the state of Texas will want to be involved in this project.
Yeah, I was going to say HEB they're a natural partner for so many reasons, including geography as well as public school interest. But you're really intending this to be kind of an opportunity for the entire family of Texas to join hands around this one thing, right?
Yes, we are. I will tell you this, that we've had partners, we've had philanthropic partners that have made major contributions. For instance, the Rainwater Foundation adopted me immediately and held my hand to sort of guide me along the path of teaching me what it would take for us to raise this kind of money. They suggested that we hire a consultant and they made a couple of suggestions about who that might be. We interviewed them, and they made sure that we had the financial wherewithal to hire the consultant. We have raised in the Fort Worth, Dallas area over $8 million from the philanthropy community. It's been a real partnership with organizations like the North Texas Communities Foundation, Dallas Communities Foundation, the Rainwater, Sid Richardson, Amon Carter Foundations, and we've received $1 million gifts from the Meadows Foundation and others. It's hard when you start naming to be sure that you've given credit where credit is due, but we have found such fabulous partners here in North Texas, and we've begun our outreach in Houston with the Greater Houston Communities Foundation. Has been very helpful for us, as well as United Way organizations, the North Texas Commission, all kinds of organizations like yours who are willing to introduce us to a statewide community of donors.
And do you feel like they're all kind of coming, that you are touching a chord with all of those organizations, that this is something that allows them to feel like they have a part in?
Absolutely. Absolutely, that's the truth. One of the things that I thought as we started this initiative is that Texas would, at large, would want to wrap our arms around Uvalde. There are so many needs for that community, just in terms of needing the nurturing love of a state to come together to make sure that they have the safety and security needs that that exist all over rural Texas to make sure that our schools are safe and secure for children, to make sure that mental health needs are met. After a tragedy like this, it takes a community years and years to heal. They are changed in a way that you and I can't imagine. I go often enough that I and am in meetings with folks in the community so that I can feel what those needs are. But lots of our educators there in Uvalde have PTSD, and that's not hard to imagine.
No.
So the counseling needs are great as well.
Well, and you start talking about all those things, and it sounds like this is a school that would be responding to needs that go beyond the normal and already significant design needs of an elementary school. So talk about the design process.
I love to talk about the design process for this school because the Huckabee team put together a special trauma-informed team to design this school. And they set out to create a series of community-wide meetings to involve the entire community in the design of the school. And what that trauma-informed design process means is that they had many, many meetings. They formed this committee of folks that were teachers and administrators, parents, business leaders, civic leaders within the community to make sure that the design that they came up with was one that was generated by the community itself. And what they learned during that process is that it was sort of a stop and start process, that they would work together for a while to make some decisions, and then they'd have to lay it down for a few days and sometimes a few weeks to let the community heal through the process. It's quite a learning process to see all those needs met. But they had the most empathic and compassionate team that you can possibly imagine. Carrie Brady led their team in a way that was warm and inviting and embracing and involved the terminology that the community was comfortable with. She learned about the culture of the Uvalde region, their colors, their, the fact that the monarch butterflies migrate through Uvalde, the fact that they have a honeybee industry there, that rivers converge and they have the most beautiful sunrises and sunsets you can imagine. All of those things will be depicted in the design of the school, which, by the way, you can see on our website at Uvalde CISD movingforwardfoundation.org.
Uvalde CISD movingforwardfoundation.org.
Right.
So you said you've been down there a lot. What's been the response of the community to having a senator who's not from around here come to participate in the process?
I'm very quiet about it. I kind of sneak in and go to the meetings and I'm just present. I attended some of the design committee meetings, some of the community advisory committee meetings. I've attended their school board meetings. The first week after the tragedy, I went down and just took a personal tour and made sure I saw all the schools and saw the district and understood what the physical needs of the district might be for safety and security upgrades, for the age of their schools, and what might be necessary.
What's something you've learned about the idea of trauma and trauma-informed response by sitting through this process?
Well, one of the things that I learned really early on is we have to be really empathic about our terminology and how we talk about it. the Uvalde community is not excited to get a new school. They are mourning the death of 19 children and 2 teachers and injuries of the students that were left injured both physically and emotionally. And we also had to be really conscious of that need to step back and lay down our pens and pencils and let folks rest with the thoughts about where we were. We always, when we design schools have design charrettes and try to meet the needs of the community. But these needs are so much deeper and so much, so much more critical to make sure that you have the proper compassion, have the proper empathy, and understand where the community is. When you talk to the teachers, what you understand is that this school will have the power to heal the community above all else. And for me, I go back to the early thoughts that I had about what would be the most important thing we could do to help the Uvalde region. It was really about that, making sure that students never had to go back on that campus, making sure that they'd never had to step through the door of that school again. And this new school, and as I said, you can see it on the website, it's just such a stunningly beautiful representation of Uvalde, from the murals that will have 21 butterflies or 21 bees or 21 river stones at the base of the river, those murals. The beautiful colors in the sunset and the sunrises are used throughout that school, in addition to top-notch, state-of-the-art, current technology for safety and security. And that's also very important in this, is that the families know that their children are going into an environment that is the safest, securest, soundest environment that they can be in.
Well, I watched the virtual fly through, and I mean it is stunning. It's beautiful. It does look secure. It also looks different from my kids' elementary school that they went to a long time ago. But it made me think, if you were a young teacher just starting out, you'd like to teach in a school that is so different physically from a lot of other elementary schools, which makes me wonder how much y'all are talking about, this is a school that's designed for a particular community in response to a particular trauma. But there's a lot of communities that experience trauma. Is this in any way a model for maybe a new way to think about how school facilities can serve as a healing purpose in the community?
I hope so. We didn't start out for this to be a model for other communities. For one thing, you hope no one else ever has to suffer through a tragedy like that. But sadly, that's not our reality in our world today. And so, yes, I hope so. One of the things that I think we're facing in rural communities is just the inability to provide the facilities that districts need in terms of safety and security. Even with additional funding, a lot of rural schools don't have the safety and security that we're able to provide in our more urban areas. The ability to hold bond elections is different in rural communities than it is in more urban and suburban communities. And safe and secure facilities take a lot of money. This particular school will be about 50% larger than most schools. And part of that is because we're trying to provide facilities that the community will need. We're trying to provide additional spaces for counseling, flex spaces for tutoring. I think that the children in Uvalde are going to need additional support for some time in many ways. And so this campus seeks to meet those needs.
So you and I know you are United Methodist. We're recording this actually off-site at a United Methodist church. Can you talk about how your United Methodist faith has influenced your thinking about your responsibility to take a leadership role in this and public service more generally, if you want?
I will. I have been a Methodist my whole life. I've attended a Methodist church and was baptized in the Methodist church with my mom and dad and my brother and sister when I was 5 years old. And have been active in the church for most of those years. And I have to say that being a Christian, being a Methodist, informs all of the choices that I make in my life. It informs my level of compassion, my level of empathy, and my need to do philanthropic work, my need to do the things that give back to my world in meaningful ways. And I would look back to the very beginning as I spent the first couple of weeks just thinking through what my feelings were about the tragedy and mourning the loss of life and just thinking about what's the most important thing that we can do. Certainly my relationship with the church has always been one that supported my efforts as an elected official, not in any specific way except to support the decision-making process and to be encouraging and help me through that process, because it isn't easy to be an elected official. It takes lots of prayer and lots of contemplation, and I find the best place for that is in my church home.
Well, I'm going to ask you one other question that has to do with your sort of moving out of your faith tradition into your role in the public square. And I wonder if you can just talk a little bit about the way that specific projects like this interact with public policy. So this is one school. It's in response to one particular tragedy. Is there a way that participating in a specific effort like this is a teaching moment, or leads us into better policy decisions, leads us to work together in a community in a different way to make broader policy decisions?
Well, I certainly hope so. I said a moment ago that my faith informs all of my decisions. And I actually found as a member of the Senate that was the case for most of my colleagues, if not all, that our faith informed our votes, informed our words as we talked about the issues. I hope we're going to move to a kinder, gentler world here really soon, where we are more inclined to talk about love than hate, where we're lifting people up more than we're oppressing societies of people. And specifically, you can look at floor debate, whether it's in the Senate or in the House, in the state or in the federal government, and you know a person's heart by their arguments that they make on the floor. When we passed out of the Senate the permitless carry, it was a very heart-rending day for me. It was probably one of the 3 or 4 most disturbing votes that we took during my time in the Senate. And I do believe that from the comments that I made that day about permitless carry, that we are reaping some of the consequences of that vote. And I hope that as we move forward as a state, as we move forward as a nation, that we contemplate reasonable, healthy solutions to the problems that we have with mass violence.
Well, I join you in that hope. So our usual interviewer, who I am subbing in for, hopefully reasonably effectively, always asks our guests if they have any homework they'd like to leave the listeners with, or any shameless plugs. I bet you have homework that is a shameless plug. So let's have it.
Well, I have given you one of those shameless plugs as we've been talking today to visit our website at Uvalde CISD Moving Forward Foundation.org and take a look at this design. I'm asking all of Texas, from our faith community to our educational community and our citizenry at large, to embrace this project. We're asking, we've begun our crowdsourcing funding right now. And so if you're on social network, you can find us at any of the, whether it's Twitter or Facebook or Instagram or now Threads. We will be on all of them, including LinkedIn as we move forward. You're likely to see a link to the Moving Forward Foundation, and we'd like you to consider a gift, whether it's $10 or $25 or $25,000. We are at that point where we're ready to sort of wrap this up so that we can break ground in September, and it is really going to be an effort that all of Texas can be very proud of.
All right. Well, Senator, thank you so much for taking the time. We're so delighted to have you on the program, and so delighted that you've turned what was a really traumatic event for you as well into something that's inspiring for the whole state.
Thank you. This is a labor of love, and it's actually something that being in the Texas Senate taught me that as a citizen of Texas, as a member of this great community of Texas that we have a responsibility to wrap our arms around our children and our families in need. And I can't think of a greater opportunity than this one to do just that.
Thank you.
Thank you.